Hello, this is the Meet the Artist event for Sandra Alderman. I'm Sandy Hopkins, Adult Services Librarian for the Virginia Beach Public Library. And Rob Kennedy is our co-host. He's the Volunteer Art Gallery Coordinator for the Central Library in Virginia Beach. After Sandra Alderman, the featured artist, gives her presentation, she and Rob will engage in a question and answer session. Welcome, Rob. Would you please introduce our artist?
Thanks very much, Sandy, and welcome to all. We are very pleased to welcome encaustic artist Sandra Alderman. Born into a family filled with an array of artists, Sandra was given the inspiration and encouragement to explore the joyful and healing power of creativity. She felt comfortable to stretch her imagination and unafraid to do things in a different way. Sandra started her fine arts journey with an oil painting class in San Angelo, Texas in 2000. Emboldened by her mentor, artist Audrey Clare, Sandra began her mixed media work, learning to be fearless in her approach and materials. She soon began entering exhibitions and winning multiple awards. Moving to Virginia Beach in 2011, Sandra became a member of the Artist Gallery and soon began exhibiting throughout Hampton Roads. 5 years later, after the tragic loss of a dear friend, Sandra started teaching herself the ancient art of encaustic through numerous hours of intensive labor and research. Sandra uses a blowtorch to apply her molten beeswax mixture on a hardwood surface, torching each layer. She makes her own media, buying pounds of beeswax and resin and mixing her own colors. Sandra has had solo exhibitions at the Sandler Center and Virginia Beach Central Library and group shows at the Mocha Satellite Gallery and Suffolk Art League, where she won the first place award. Her piece, Livin' in the Hood, is part of the Utility Box project in the Creative Vibe District, located in front of the Chesapeake Distillery on Virginia Beach Boulevard. Having recently relocated to Portland, Oregon, Sandra's piece, Navigating Seas, was accepted in an international exhibition in Verum Ultimum Art Gallery in Portland, Oregon. She has also been juried into 3 national exhibitions. Thanks very much for joining us, Sandra. We are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for this adventure into the whole ball of wax of encaustics. And I want to thank Robert Kennedy, the volunteer coordinator for Central Library, and also Sandy Hopkins. She's the adult services librarian. Thank you for putting this program together so that all of us artists can share what we love to do. I want to also take the time to thank my husband, Frank Alderman. My pieces have I work with a lot of different sizes, and he builds my substrates from scratch. He also does the framing, and it's really neat to have someone where, as an artist, say, I need something this size, and he does it. So I'm very, very grateful for his support. My son, Nate Frazier, with Swell PDX here in Portland, Oregon, helped me put this presentation together, and I couldn't do it without him. He and his lovely family are the reason we moved to Portland, Oregon, and we love it. Also, the most important thing that I want to thank, besides all my friends and associates in Virginia Beach for their encouragement, inspiration, I really want to thank God. He plays such an important part in my life, and just as a person and as an artist, inspiring me and just helping me get through everything. So I do want to thank him. And thank you for being here today. Now, this slide coming up, History of Encaustic Art. Probably a lot of you maybe have not heard of encaustic art before. This is an ancient art that actually dates back to 5th century BC. It is always done on a hardwood surface so that it can have something to grip to, and it has a heat source. The word encaustic means, it's actually Greek encaustica. It comes from the Greek word encaustica, meaning to burn in. So in order for something to be encaustic, it has to have that heat source to burn in. The most popular thing that encaustic art is known for is the Fayum mummy portrait paintings. Now, some of these, I think there's like 900 or so that are still preserved because wax is impervious to moisture. So it's really, really a cool medium to work with. And the work that I do, I like to take the ancient art of encaustic and do it with a little bit of a modern twist. So you're getting ready to journey with me and kind of see some interesting things. I hope you find it that way. Now, this slide, Encaustic Tools, this is going to show you the variety of and the difference of this medium compared to maybe some other ones. First of all, you see the crystals in like a little dish. Now that is my Damar resin. Damar resin is a tree sap, and this is part of the encaustic medium. This gives it the flexibility, gives it durability. It's put in like with a portion of wax, and it's melted down. So that is in the stage where I'm just getting ready to melt it down and add it to my beeswax, which I then filter and put into cakes. The slide over here with all the colors. Now that is my encaustic palette. A little different than maybe an oil painting palette or acrylic or something like that. The cool thing about my palette is it's liquid when I heat it up. Once I shut that pancake burner, that's what I'm using there. Once I shut that off, it hardens. So it's ready to go next time I'm ready to go. And I love to mix all of my colors. I use some earth pigments, and then I use some of the pigments, oil pigments, to color my work. Now you're going to see a slide with a picture with some of the different tools. You'll see my trusty, if you want to go back one more, Sandy, I'm still on the tool slide. Yeah, there we go. There's a blowtorch. There's some variety of different scrapers, diggers. If you look into that box, I love to use pieces of broken shell, pieces of branches, anything that's organic. I like to press into that wax when it's good and warm, and it kind of leaves an imprint. So I love to use nature in my work. It's very inspired by nature. And the last slide on this the picture on this slide is what my husband goes through to actually make my substrates. And here's one that he's built for me, and he has the different braces putting it together. So this is before I work, and then he puts on the frame, which I like to use a lot of oak and depending on the work. But those are the tools of my trade. Now, the Creative Vibe District, I have a piece like Robert mentioned earlier. It's called Living in the Hood, and it was part of the utility box project that they had down in the Creative Vibe District in the last couple of years. It is located across the street, my particular box, kind of next door to Chesapeake Distillery and kind of catty corner from Artist Gallery if you want to go visit it. But this is a picture of the Creative Vibe Art Walk. And I think they do it in the springtime, maybe once a month. Really, really fun to go and see all of the artwork. The next slide is going to be a close-up of Living in the Hood. Now, this is my piece. It's not an encaustic piece. It actually is acrylic, and I did that in Temple, Texas. Chasing Color. This is an exhibit that I had at the Sandler Center, and this exhibit went from March to May 2019. The fun thing about working on this exhibit, Chasing Color, is I hadn't really been doing encaustic work, maybe a year, year and a half of really, really going after teaching myself. And this exhibit gave me the opportunity to really push myself in my medium because I was just learning. And so I had 24 large pieces to make for this show. And it really, really made me go deeper than what I probably normally would have. So I'm very, very grateful to Emily LeBeau, the cultural art director of Virginia Beach, for allowing me to have this opportunity. And I'm going to be showing you some of the work from that show, and I'll talk a little bit about it. And I have a few stories on some of the pieces. This piece here, Remnants, in Process, this was one of the pieces in the Sandler show, Chasing Color. It was my largest piece to date as far as encaustic. I think it was 46.5 by 48.5, so quite large. This is just one of the pieces I was working on it a few days before the exhibit opened. There's 2 more slides of Remnants. This is me working on it, like, I think the night before it was, maybe 2 days before it was due. But the next slide shows it finished. This piece, I have a little story that I just want to read about remnants. Remnants, a small remaining quantity of something, remains, leftover, residue, tail end. Although they may be only small pieces, remnants together can make a huge impact. I've always found beauty in the smallest bits and pieces, seemingly insignificant things, and I feel that vision goes beyond material possessions. I kind of feel like it goes into people. Yeah, people are very important, even if they seem to be disregarded. They have a place. So I have one more slide with the finished remnants, and then we'll move on to some other ones. And this is the finished work of remnants at the Sandler. And that did sell opening night. That was cool. Okay, and the next slide. This piece, Deep Side of the Ocean, this was one of the pieces in the Sandler exhibit. I use a lot of different materials, and the reason that I list my materials, I want people to have the vision of what they can do with things that are normally just discarded, or, you know, you don't really think about putting them in art. There's so many ways to use different materials, and so I like to list them. This, for instance, beeswax, the resin, the pigment, but it's got paper, and it's got a shellac burn into it. That's what the part that is the black, that's where I use the shellac, and golden copper leaf. So you'll see a lot of, even as we move into some of the other pieces, I have some different type of products that I like to use in my work. This piece, all boxed in, there's two slides that go with this one. How many of us have unpackaged something and you see all this really cool cardboard and you're like, oh, it's just too cool to throw out? Well, that's what happened here. It's like, oh my, I have to figure out how to do encaustic on this. So it was quite a process of doing this piece, you know, trying to figure out how to torch paper, because this is paper cardboard from an insert of a box. But I was able to do that, and it was actually quite interesting and fun. But all boxed in. The next view will show you a little bit of the dimension of this piece, because it's rather deep and 3-dimensional. There we are. And I have a little write-up on this particular piece. I'm an extremely claustrophobic person, and with when a few years ago, and I still suffer with a lot of pain in my arms, I had to get a lot of MRIs, and they needed to find out what was wrong with my neck, which, translated into my arms. And so we had to go to Portsmouth Naval Hospital, back and forth. I was going for physical therapy for my arms, and the tunnels are, if you're claustrophobic, you know what a tunnel is like. And I just felt boxed in every time, back and forth. And so that's kind of where the inspiration came from this piece. Kind of wild how inspiration comes in many different forms. The heavens shout his name. This piece is really, really special to me. It's quite large, and again, multiple of different type of materials. But when I was a child, and I'll read this story on the heavens shout his name. As a young child, I had the experience of living in Fairbanks, Alaska for 5 years. My family lived on the outskirts of town in a small trailer park with 7 other families. Fairbanks is known as an ideal location for viewing the aurora borealis, as people travel from around the world to see it at this prime location. I visualize the heavens shout his name, celebrating their creator as a multitude of colors dance in the sky, just as I viewed it as a child. And when I lived there in Alaska, and we would lay on just the hill right down from our trailer, and I'd look up at the sky, and I'd look at these dancing fairies, is what I called them as a 5-year-old. And I said, God, I want to paint the fairies someday. And that was my dream. I wanted to be a painter, and I wanted to paint color. So I'm really grateful, because that's what I'm doing now, is I'm painting color. And so I look back at that as a very fond time. Fragmented. This is a piece that, again, in the Sandler, Chasing Color. This piece was kind of interesting. All of us have seen, or a lot of us, we've seen the different fiber cloth. I think you use it for, you can use it for paper mache and different things like that. The cloth that has, I forget what it's called, but anyways, I love to use that in my work. And you can rinse some of the mud type stuff off it, and then you can see that veiled look that I have there at the bottom. And the top part, it's scraping back. It's multiple layers of wax after I'm fusing in between each layer, and then I'm scraping back to reveal the different colors. Ancient Ways. This is a rather large piece at the Sandler, and this piece is, it has a very, very unique history and beginning, and I'm going to read it to you. Ancient Ways. This work combines an ancient form of Japanese silk dyeing called shibori with some ancient Japanese pottery pieces called satsuma pottery, along with a mixture of things to bring it together. So here's a story of how I came upon the pottery pieces. I answered an email that offered to sell several satsuma vases that had been through the mill, basically shipwrecked, from fellow artist Mike Kling. Now here's how Mike procured these beautiful pieces of history. Mike says, my Uncle Frank was a longshoreman who worked in New York Harbor from a little after World War I until late 50s, when he passed away. It was New York City, and just as the Teamsters were always finding things that fell off a truck, so Uncle Frank and friends were always coming with things they found floating in the harbor, like the vases. My grandmother got them when Uncle Frank passed away, and I got them after she passed. The vases were satsuma pottery, and considered export wear by their Japanese makers. They were probably made in the 19 teens or 20s when they were shipped right out and through some twist of fate or other found themselves adrift in the East River, where they were rescued by Uncle Frank and the tugboat crew. I am glad that they will continue their journey in a new incarnation. So those are pieces of the pottery. You'll also notice on this piece, there are some round discs that are dark gray. And there's like a bar and some metal pieces. Now, I did pour cement. I made the disc. I made that and dyed it and used the pottery pieces. And then, of course, the silk, that is dyed. And that was very, very interesting to fuse, very, very carefully fused onto my substrate. Now, like with all encaustic work, we are working with layers of wax, layers of the encaustic medium, and each layer has to be fused. So I don't know how many layers are on this, quite a few, but the wax, again, makes it very impervious to moisture, which is pretty cool. Now, this piece, Ancient Stories, kind of similar to Ancient Ways in a way. I like the old world look on this piece. Now, the bottom portion, I use this a lot in my work. I like to use Venetian plaster, and with that, I put it on a little extra thick on my substrate, and it kind of gave it a crackle look, and that was kind of interesting. So, you know, as I was working on these pieces, again, I was discovering, you know, what my medium does. So it was rather fascinating to see what I can do with wax and a torch. And just something about the torch. I'm afraid of fire, so the idea I'm working with a torch is kind of interesting, but it is fun. And I'm very careful. So that is Ancient Stories. Now, Gridlocked, this is a photo encaustic piece. Now, the reason it's photo encaustic is that grid look. That was a photograph that I took in downtown Norfolk. I was walking with my older grandboys, and I'm always looking up, always got my cell phone out, you know, capturing things that inspire my work. And so I just looked down, and there was this cool grid, and I just fell in love with it. So I kind of changed some colors a little bit, and then I had it printed on rice paper, and then I had to fuse that. And that again was a process to get that rice paper to absorb and to adhere, but I was able to do that. And then there's some reclaimed pieces of wood and metal in this piece also. This piece, In Forest Deep, this piece was again using the shellac burn method. That's where the tree trunks came. And if you look at this piece, if you're able to get really, really close to it, there's multiple layers you can see of vintage paper. And there's a lot of it that I chose to burn through and then wax over and expose. And it really did. I hated this piece actually when I was making it. And that shows that you should never give up too quick, because a lot of my pieces, you know, and I think speaking with other artists, a lot of our work, it is a love-hate relationship. And I think that's where the passion goes into it, because there's a struggle while we are creating. And that's, that gives me goosebumps. That's where healing comes through with art, is working through that struggle. So this piece, yeah, I didn't really like it when I was doing it. And then it just kind of came to be what it was supposed to. I didn't intend for it to be a forest picture, but it was supposed to be. And it actually won, I think it was a Suffolk members exhibit. It won first place, and I did win a solo exhibit that I was not able to do last summer with COVID, but it was an interesting piece to work with. Layered beneath. Now with this piece, it literally is layered beneath. There's layers, and just like all of it, but there's layers of just different lightly colored papers that I torched in, to the wax to kind of give it a depth. And I also tried something with this. It was my first piece of doing. I'm trying to remember what the technique is called, but I actually formed the leaves with wax and using a stencil technique. And so it's three-dimensional, and was able to carve away and add a lot of age, and it's got gold leaf. But yeah, that's actually the piece. I think it's the one behind me in the wall. But anyways, it was an interesting, fun piece to do. I'm just minding my own beeswax. Yes. Now, this was the opening piece for the Central Library exhibit. I'm just minding my own beeswax show. And that was September 2019. And that's how I met these wonderful people, and very, very grateful. But this was my my piece that this has a lot of meaning too. Like, well, that's what our work is. It's us. And I took on this piece it's a cloth napkin that my son and his wife, when we first moved to Virginia Beach, they had gotten married just a couple months after in 2011. And so she had all these this beautiful wedding in the Poconos at her family's property. And she had these cloth napkins that were big white. And she gave me some extras, to use. So of course I, wanted to do something special. And I, on this piece, I rested the cloth. And then with that, I fused it to the board. And if you look closely, there's going to be some rusty razor blades. I like to use rusty found objects, and there's little tiny bees in there. But minding my own beeswax, I kind of like to do that. I don't like to get in other people's business. Consequence of thought. The sister piece of minding my own beeswax, I used the same technique with the dyed rusted cloth, only with this one. And the way it got the title, Consequence of Thought, I like to just sit around. I'm a daydreamer. I sit around and I think, what if you could do this? Or I see something. I see something that I've used, paper. I'm big on repurposing things. And so I'll see, I'm like, oh, how can I turn that into art? What can I do with it? And I know a lot of us think like that. So with this one, there you see this ruffly edge on the left. Well, we had corn on the cob the night before for dinner. And I'm like, these are really cool. I know people, you roll tamales in them and you make a little corn husk dolls. Hey, what is it going to be like with wax on it? So I kind of went crazy, and I got my old sewing machine out, and I have some vintage papers, and you know what? It kind of turned out fun. So consequence of thought. This is what happens when you think or daydream. Navigating seas. This piece again was using the shibori silk dyeing method. So I dyed the fabric. That was white when I started. And I have another, you see the long bar there, that is poured cement. And I love to use either rusty metal or just some kind of metal. I like to have just substance. I like my pieces to be weighted with that. But navigating seas, it was actually the poster piece for I'm just minding my own beeswax. And then when we right before we moved here to Portland, I just checked the local area to see what kind of shows were open, and I put it in an international exhibit here in Portland, and it got accepted, and so that was kind of cool. But navigating seas, to me, it was almost prophetic, because we have been navigating quite a few seas, and that's where I'm very grateful for my faith to help me get through this. Please bring me flowers in the morning. You'll see on here again a mixture of there's some rusty metal pieces that I found, and down there in the middle to the left, you'll see the portion of the color. That is some of the papers that I like to color, and I like to add them into my work. So that is just some of my collage papers that I like to put in there. And again, just digging back into the wax. Once you do that and you're fusing between the layers, if you look closely, you can see little things that might be a print from a shell, the little edge. And then I rub pigment into that. So I like to use a lot of natural things again to make my mark making. But this is Please Bring Me Flowers in the Morning. The Cotton Exchange is another photo encaustic piece. My husband and I were visiting Wilmington, North Carolina a few years ago, and we decided to get out for the day. Family, we were there for his daughter's wedding, and so we had a little time to spill. And we went to this really cool place called the Cotton Exchange. And it was really, really neat. I saw this windmill and I saw the sign behind it and just took the picture and didn't really realize it was going to come out the way it did. But I did that, then printed it on silk, or actually this was on cotton. I printed it on cotton and then fused it with the layers of wax. Day 3, in the beginning. This piece, I have a little write-up. This was at a exhibit at the Artist Gallery at our old location, and it was all about books. It was about, we were to create art that had to do with our favorite books or something like that. And so day 3, in the beginning, this is based on Genesis and of the creation. And so this piece I really, really like. I have Virginia Beach sand actually in it, in the sand portion. And if you look underneath like up in the sky and throughout the piece, I've actually printed Genesis 1 to 13 and put it on the background. And that way I could kind of scrape back and see some of the words. And the reason I chose the Bible to, as one of my books, it's something I read every day, and I get so much help and just encouragement and strength from. So that's where this one is based on. Daylight Has Broken. Very similar. There were 3 pieces at the Beeswax show. Please Bring Me Flowers, a little bit different. And then there was Daylight Has Broken, and trying to remember the third one. Can't remember off bat, but it was very similar to this one too. And all 3, or these 2, did sell at the exhibit. But this is using collage paper, and again, digging back, using rusty metal pieces. Okay, the Art of the Vibe 2. This was a group exhibit that Allison at MoCA had asked me to be a part of. And it was really neat. There were about, I think there were 7 or 8 of us that were chosen. And I had 2 pieces that they put in this, both of them that were in the Sandler exhibit that we'll look at next. In Foggy Marsh is one of them. And this piece, you can see on the ingredient list, I think, yeah, I've got rusted metal, cement, my pigment, and paper. And so this is, again, a photo encaustic work. Now, the photo on the Foggy Marsh was actually in Vermont. And I'm just going to read a little something. I think I have that. Here we are. I was able to join my husband on a trip to Vermont in November 2018. And on a cold, foggy day, as the snow began to lightly fall, we came across this beautiful marsh that was shown. So it really, it was already just lovely. And putting the wax on it and fusing it kind of gives it that setback mystic look. So I enjoy that piece. And can't see the forest for the trees. Now that was another piece that was in the Sandler. Again, a piece that I honestly was ready. I think the day that it started coming together, I was ready to destroy it. Literally, I just didn't know where it was going to go. And then it just happened. I spend a lot of time praying over my work as I'm working. And so this piece kind of came together. You can see, hopefully you can look up close, and there's actually 3-dimensional little trees that have been put on there and fused, and there's photo encaustic work, there's vintage paper, there's just a whole lot of mark making and real bark, and it's just very earthy. My husband kind of framed it really cool too. It's very rustic, repurposed wood. Connections, another fun piece. I love to use vintage paper and encyclopedias, and all of the work that has the vintage papers in it. I have a really, really cool story about finding a suitcase of these vintage encyclopedias when my husband was dying from cancer years ago. He didn't die, but he was due to. And I really was praying to get that for my work. And I wasn't doing encaustic then, but mixed media. And I came across a suitcase on the way home that day, and it was full of these papers that I use all the time. So it was quite a gift from heaven to me. Also, just to go back real quick on connections. Yeah, this piece also was in Persistence 2 at the Art Center. The opening actually came, like we got to open and then COVID shut everything down in March last year, but that was kind of neat. So it was in the Women's Persistence 2 exhibit. Now this section, encaustic sculpture, and we just have a few of these and just a few more slides, but encaustic sculpture is really, really interesting because you're working with a fluid material, liquid wax, and which hardens instantly when it cools, and then you're trying to do it on a curved surface, which is very fun and was kind of exciting to try. But this particular piece, Piece Within, there's going to be 2 shots of it, and then there'll be a third that we'll look at of how these 2 pieces kind of helped each other come into being. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, there's looking down into the top of the head for Piece Within. And then we're going to go to the next slide, the blessing bowl. Now, the blessing bowl was, that was a donation that I made. I had always wanted to make a vessel, And I thought, this will be a good time. They, in the Tidewater area, everybody knows about the Empty Bowl. I think it's the Empty Bowl Project, what it's called. But all of the potters, they get together and they make these bowls, and then people spend, I think you buy a ticket for $35, and then it helps all of the people with food in our area. And so we were approached at the artist gallery, told about this, and asked if we wanted to donate something. And so I wanted to make this bowl. So I used homemade paper, and then I needed something. I shaped it and I had it going. Well, when it was time to put the wax on and torch it, I needed something round to hold it on that I could torch. And there was the head in my studio. So I used that to hold the bowl and torch it. Well, the head was sitting on the floor. It was just a ceramic head from, I think, IKEA or someplace. And it was sitting on the floor. And I'd always thought, I need to do something with that. That has a voice somewhere. That's why it was sitting out there. Well, something fell off the wall, hit the head, cracked it open, splattered wax a few places. But as I looked at the head, I'm like, I can work with this. It's perfect. So the blessing bowl blessed me in more ways than one. And hopefully with the donation, it blessed others. And there's just an inside view of it. I think it says, please feed the hungry. Okay. Flight on a foggy day. This is discarded pieces of wood. Actually, the back piece, you see like the shape of a birdhouse. Well, my husband is known for making the most incredible artistic birdhouses. He calls them tweet retreats. And we're going to be marketing them soon. They have like earrings on and cool hair and everything. Well, this was like a discarded piece of the back of one, minus the rough wood on the front. And I saw it laying there in his pile, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to use it. So it kind of came together with a photo encaustic piece again. And then I like to use twigs to make it natural. But flight on a foggy day looks like fun. Treehouse, just an itty bitty little miniature. I put this in a miniature show. I think Charles Taylor, it went into one of the shows there, but it was fun and cute, and I had to use a little torch for that one. All hyped up. Now this piece, there's two of them that I made very, very similar. And the piece here, I'm actually reusing Fathom, and I say Fathom because Fathom Coffee is from Virginia Beach, and one of my dearest friends, Susan Werby, her husband roasts it, and her son has Fathom Coffee. They're in the Vibe. But I asked her if she would save me some coffee filters, and so she did. And so the big background coffee filter is from them. And then I just thought, you know what, coffee's a great stain. So I just started making my paint was with my coffee, using different strengths. And of course, you'll see twine in there. I like to do really, I don't know, just unusual things with my my materials. But there's grommets in there. There's wax twine and other coffee filters. There's some cone ones that I used. And the next piece kind of goes with it, all hyped up and totally exhausted. And boy, does this one hit home now. I am tired. But this piece, it was a lot of fun to make. I had just gotten a shipment of some art supplies from Jerry's, and I had this great box, and I started pulling it apart, and I'm like, oh my, look at the way just the edges are. And so I got really, really excited and started working on this piece, and it was really involved, and it's heavy. I mean, it'll hang well, but it is a heavy piece. but it is cardboard, and it's got a shellac burn look to it, but it also has the totally exhausted part. It has heat exhaust wrap for a car, and that's the other material in there and helped it get its name, Totally Exhausted. The Quest. The Quest, it's another large piece. This was a very, very difficult piece to do. I don't think I have the size on here, but I think it's about 38 by, I don't know, it's big. But this piece, the quest was for a friendship that had gone wrong, and I just wanted to make peace. And so while I was working on this piece, I would try to speak with this person and make peace, and it just wasn't going to happen. But I literally have tears that are torched in the piece, so it was a very emotional piece. And most of my work, it does come from it comes from the heart. It comes deep, and things that I feel, things that I'm going through. It's a good, healthy way to express yourself is through just the gift of art, being able to create something. So this was a difficult piece. It turned out to be probably one of my favorite pieces, but was very, very hard and still holds just a sadness, because peace can be made. Peace can be made. Oh, bum bum. Well, this is one of those fun little lessons on making sure you have the right rabbit for the photo. Now, she just turned 7, darling little granddaughter, the middle one here in Portland. When she turned 6, and we were kind of in the middle of, I was doing a lot of getting rid of stuff because I knew there was a move coming. But I'm like, I got to make that baby a piece of art for her birthday. So I had taken numerous pictures of her the previous trip with this one rabbit, which I thought was her favorite bum bum. So I took those pictures. I'm like, okay, I got a picture of the rabbit sitting down and had it posed. The whole work, I did it posing with their animals ahead. So as I'm home, I make this piece, totally excited about it. It's printed on cotton, photo encaustic, can't wait for her to get it. So I send it to her, and then I ask her mom, so how did she like her art? She's like, oh yeah, she loved it. And I said, well, send me a picture of her with her artwork. So she sends me this darling little picture of this girl holding it next to her head. And she has that glint in her eye where you don't have the whole story, but you don't know what the story is. But I knew something was brewing. So the next visit I went to, or I think I was speaking with her brother a time or two later, and somehow Bum Bum came up and he said, Gammy, that wasn't Bum Bum, that was Coconut. So I had the wrong rabbit, and she got a great piece of art of Coconut, but not of Bum Bum. And the last slide, that's my girl with Bum Bum. That's the real Bum Bum. And that's my little Evangeline. Darling children here. And she lights up my life. And we're at the last slide. This is my contact information. I would love for you to come on and look at my website, see the work I have. And I will be, adding some new things soon. But thank you so much for joining with me today. And I hope that I was able to give you a little bit of a little more of an opening into the world of encaustics and just the different things that you can do with it and the materials. It's endless. It's only your imagination is only the limitation that we have. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Sandra. That was really magical, and you have such a creative mind. And it's amazing the array of materials that you use, the natural and found and man-made, etc. And I would also encourage people not only to visit the site, but if you have a chance to see Sandra's work in person, it is even more awe-inspiring. And I've fallen in love with your work again. When you get these ideas and inspirations, and you have all sorts of those, do you draw or envision a design for a piece of artwork? For go ahead.
Yeah, some pieces I do. You know, I might make just something real simple, but I find a lot of what I'm doing, like when I'm working on a few pieces, usually I'm working on several pieces at one time, that it's my brain that is thinking out the parts, and then, you know, I do them and then see how it goes. Because one thing about this medium that is really, really interesting, you can make it do some things that you want it to. You can, you know, make it conform. But I think the exciting part, when you really grow to love it, is when you let the medium help guide you. And so that's what I've been, you know, kind of learning through that journey of working through the 24 large pieces. It really helped me see that.
And is it actually possible, or do you sometimes change elements or add after you started, or is it possible even to change the composition a bit? For example, with oil paint, you can sort of erase, if you will. Whereas if you're doing fresco, you know, it dries quickly, and so you have to, what you put there, that's what you get. So how much flexibility?
Oh, unbelievable flexibility. In fact, I'm trying to think of the piece. Well, there's been more than one, but I had a piece that I did, and I kind of worked on it quick. And I had not been doing encaustic very long at that time, and I didn't really like it. I think I even put it in an exhibit, but I didn't, I just didn't feel right. So the cool thing about encaustic is all it takes is your torch or your heat gun, because some people don't use a torch. And I started with a heat gun, but it will melt it down to the liquid state, and then it hardens again. So you can maneuver things, you can scrape things back. You have to be careful though, because you can have things and you have to be willing to let go. Just like with a lot of mixed media work, you have to be willing to cover up. With my medium, you have to be willing to, like, torch it again or scrape it all back. And one of my favorite pieces, I don't have a slide of it. I don't think I got a good picture of it, but it did sell at opening night of the Sandler, was More Than a Drink. And it was a piece that, another one, I hated it until I started realizing that I could scrape those colors back and swirl them and make them into something beautiful. And it really turned out well. So yes, you can change the whole thing if you want to, and you could scrape the whole thing off or just go over it.
That is great. And so you need to be brave, which you are, and you need to have faith that it'll work out. So that is great. Now, you put these on wood, so it needs obviously to be on a hard surface. Do you ever use any other type? Is it possible to use any other type of hard surface to put your work on?
Oh yeah, you can do it on. You could do it on tile. You can do, like you saw that head. That was ceramic. And then the bowl, that was actually handmade paper. So you can do it on a variety of surfaces. The thing about, you want to make sure that there is a barrier, just like when you put gesso on a canvas, you want to, I can't think of the word, seal. You want to seal the wood so that, it doesn't just absorb into it. So that's where you can put paper on the wood to start with. Some people will glue watercolor paper on the top of their wood substrate just to start out, so you don't get a lot of pinholes. And excuse me. And other people you can get encaustic gesso. That's something you can use, or Venetian plaster. I use that, and I love the different texture you can also build with that plaster.
Okay, good. Very good. Now, encaustic, again, from the term for to burn in, but there's also a cold wax process as well. Do you ever work with that? And this may be a naive question, but is it ever possible to combine the two?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is totally on target. And that is one of the next things that I want to do. I have not done that before, but I have been working with oil and cold wax. I started doing some work in probably a few years ago. It was after the first time I saw oil and cold wax was visiting Portland, Oregon. It was in the airport. So I came home and it's like, yeah, I got to do this. But you can combine the two. And that's rather exciting. In fact, I'm signed up to take several classes in the future. And one of them is with some encaustic teachers from all over the country, and it's online. So I'm sure I'll be doing some of that in my class. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it
do
sounds
that.
exciting,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
know you'll be successful at it. Now, for those who are interested in encaustic and who are wanting to start out, they have perhaps done other art forms, maybe not. What sort of advice for learning about it would you suggest?
Well, first of all, if you live, if you live in the Tidewater area, um, I know Michelle Barnes, fabulous at the Artist Gallery. She teaches, she's wonderful. And there's Sherry Littlepage, she's in the area, wonderful in caustic. There's some people there that you can get some lessons from. If you want to journey on your own, what I suggest, and this is what I did, it takes a lot of dedication, but you can get books. You can go online, get books. You can go on YouTube. You can go on Pinterest. You just research and then watch videos and watch what people do and then practice on your own, and don't take no for an answer. I don't take no for an answer with my work. It's like, I think something, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And if I can't, then I can't, but I'm going to try to make a way. So don't give up before you see the results, because you just have to hang in there. I hated encaustic work. When I first took a demonstration in Texas, this was probably, 10, 11 years ago, and I didn't like it. And I bought the iron. There's an iron you can use, and I have one, but I don't use it that often. But I just didn't enjoy it, and I didn't really get to know it. And so that's what it takes, is actually pushing yourself into it. You can learn on your own, but it does take a lot of dedication. But there are some great teachers available too.
Thanks very much. Very good advice and inspiring as well. And your future plans, what are you thinking of planning for the future?
Yeah, I'm real excited to be here in Portland, Oregon. I know with everything shut down, there's a lot of galleries that aren't open and all that, but so I've been unpacking a lot, and we've been through some harrowing things, as some of you know, while we've been here. But art-wise, for the future, I'm set up to take that class. I'm also taking a drawing class from a local artist here that does cartoon work and different things I'm very excited about. This year for me is kind of back to basics. And one of the first things that I did years ago was as a teenager, I loved to draw. And so, I thought, let me just get back to basics and get some real training and put it with some of the other ideas that I have going on with my abstract work. So I'm excited. One other thing that I'm really, really happy about is I have signed up for the orientation for a homeless women's project. And I'm very, very excited to start getting involved with that. And I will be working with art with homeless women in the future. So that to me, probably, that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. And those type of things have always impacted my work the most, is working with people. And again, I think going back to remnants, I don't see people as just discarded things, no matter what they may look like. So living here in an area that has a huge homeless population, I feel like I'm in the right spot. So yeah, let some women feel healing through art. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's a great project, and we look forward to following your work. Again, we encourage everybody to check out Sandra's website, and again, see it in person if you can. Thanks very much for joining us, Sandra. It was really an inspiration, and we thank everybody for viewing the show today. Be sure and join us again next month when we'll have another great art show. Thanks again.
Thank you.